A legacy became linked with a legend. August 22nd, 1987, a year after its success on the Famicom in Japan, The Legend of Zelda was recounted in America, taking all that we knew about games and changing all that we knew about games. Before the godsend to gaming that was and is, Shigeru Miyamoto was enlisted by Nintendo to save the company from its early failures at breaking into the arcade business. Video games were not yet an artistic objective. They were a license to print money, going all the way back to Pong. They were an entrepreneurial endeavor, designed by Silicon Valley programmers who became treated by men like Ray Kassar of Atari as no more important to the money-making operation than the guy on the assembly line putting together the cabinet. Miyamoto was an artist and one of the gaming industry's first, after saving Nintendo of America from the bomb that was Radar Scope, turning it into the atomic opposite that was Donkey Kong. The man's vision of telling a story in both narrative and visuals, no matter how rudimentary, saw Jumpman's super spiritual successor bring life back into the American video game business. This was no novelty, this was something new, and games were here to stay. But his follow-up to Super Mario Bros. Would leave arguably an even more indelible impression of innovative insight. The Legend of Zelda, a title as misleading as Metroid's. As a kid, whenever I thought Metroid, I always thought of the character as Metroid. But that was not Metroid, that was Samus, and this was not Zelda, this was Link. A boy who lacked all of the abilities of the pseudo-superhero Mario, but instead grew into a hero. At the beginning of Zelda, you have nothing. No sword, no shield, no tool to help this high fantasy world known as Hyrule from the pig-like Gerudo known as Ganondorf. But right above you on the first screen is an obvious cave. You enter this dark dungeon and an old man says, "It's dangerous to go alone, take this!" And there you go, you've got your sword and you're on your way on your quest. But now, why did the game not just start you off with the sword if it was that easy to get? This first minute of Zelda was a statement. It was indicative of its revolutionary design that, along with an intuitive inventory system, would come to influence the role-playing genre. The idea of growth, of becoming the hero instead of just being one, of actually taking part in that development from blank slate to battle-hardened champion. You go from zero to hero, literally, and by the end of Miyamoto's Legend, you were indeed the latter. Its story was epic, but its domain was even grander. Inspired by the high fantasy works of J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, Miyamoto's artistic counterpart and fellow designer on the project, Takashi Tezuka, fleshed out an overhead sandbox world that was organic. The mind-blowing skill of being able to move in every direction seemed to so easily outshine Mario's capacities. I mean, sure, the plumber could shoot fireballs and jump 20 feet in the air, but could he retrace his steps to get that off-screen mushroom? No, ah, damn it. Koji Kondo, the John Williams of video games, if that's not too bold, would one-up his previous iconic score in Super Mario Bros. With an 8-bit orchestral theme that made you feel like you were really on this adventure. For one of the first times, original composition by a musician served as a major piece of the presentational puzzle. But it did something more. This idea of actually incorporating music into the gameplay would be another one of the firsts for the medium, and would become a natural theme in the Zelda games, in particular the Ocarina of Time. Dissimilar to Mario, which thematically was rooted in the physical of moving the body, Zelda was all about the mind, of using your noggin to crack its quite cryptic cases. Technically, The Legend of Zelda isn't all that long of a game, especially compared to later iterations, and can be completed in about 5 to 10 hours if you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing. But in 1987, few of us knew what we were doing without the aid of this newfangled thing known as the internet and its wealth of, what do you call them, walkthroughs? Alright, so pop quiz to the quizzical. What did The Legend of Zelda do for gaming? Sure, it was the progenitor of action-adventure, of blending fast-paced swordplay with mind-maddening puzzles. And sure, it struck gamers as a true epic that not only told a story at a time when story was still new to games, but told its story seriously, text titling its opening instead of just some gist jotted down in the reclusivity of the instruction manual. And sure, it was revolutionary in its sound design, but what else? Well, let's just ice the cake with a feature that changed how we play games forever. The save feature, thanks to a built-in battery that at last made grabbing a phone call or answering nature's call possible. Games were at last patient. Like a book, they could be picked up where you left off, their stories could be continued. Now, far be it easy to discuss all that Zelda is and did for gaming in a short span of 5 minutes. Such is the Coles Notes of its legacy. It became Nintendo's flagship next to Mario and spawned a series of sequels, many of which still rank as the greatest games of all time. The formula Miyamoto's team mastered, and more importantly, the method in which this artist actually filled a world with his own experiences, made this an act of expression. For one of the first times, as seems to be the motif of this day in gaming, the video game that released itself to a recuperating American market, defying the one-dimensional quarter-pushing mentality of the arcades, was almost indisputably a work of art. August 22nd, 1987.